So Monday was a step in the right direction. South Africa getting closer to beginning its vaccine marathon. The Covax facility now says it should provide just over 3 million extra doses by the middle of the year. Good news, yes, but of course the race has only just begun, and it's a complicated one. Reporter Mike MARILLIER has been tracking the numbers for us, joins us in studio now. So, Mike, we are hopefully going to administer our first doses mid-February sometime. We know that other countries have started before us, but how do we compare?
Yeah, Sally, we wanted to take a look at the progress of other countries around the world just to get a sense of the timelines. How far have they managed to get since they actually started their rollout? That could give us a few clues about our own journey, the long run that we are facing in the months ahead. So let's focus on some of those numbers. This is from Our World in Data providing these stats to us. Israel at the moment, Sally, the world leader, 36.5% of the population has received at least its first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. The UAE, just over 32%. Both of those countries have relatively small populations, so they've benefited from that. Not so difficult to roll out the vaccine. The UK not doing too badly, Sally, 14% roughly. And the USA is really trying to make up as much ground as it can after a really slow start. It's sitting at just under 8%. Spain is interesting because it's got a similar size population to South Africa, around about 2.6% of the population. Argentina, quite important as it's a developing country to some extent as well, less than 1%. Mexico, 0.5%. Argentina and Mexico started at the end of December, Sally, so they've had a month to put this in place. They seem to be struggling to some extent as well. And then Indonesia, it only started about 2 weeks ago, so it does have some ground to catch up, I suppose, but still 0.2%. As you can see, it's just a tiny dent in the overall population. But that, as I said, is the first dose. Let's take a look now quickly at total vaccinations, because as you know, many of these vaccines require 2 doses. So the number's a little bit different there. Israel has 21% of the population fully vaccinated, the UAE just under 3%, the US just under 2%, Spain 0.8%, and then the UK 0.7%. Now you might be wondering, why is the UK so low, given the fact that we have seen this massive rollout in Britain? Well, what the UK did, Sally, was it focused on getting the first doses out as widely as possible. It didn't worry about taking a small group and saying, let's give you the 2 doses and get you vaccinated. Instead, it said, we think the first dose will offer quite a lot of protection the first time round, and so we'll try and get it to as many people as possible. So that really explains its strategy.
Right, that makes sense, and it's a very interesting decision that you take, whether you reserve 2 doses for each person, or you give as many people as possible 1 dose in the hope that it gives you some cover. And it's quite interesting because the research coming through, as you say, is indicating that you do get a lot of protection. I think it was Dr. Karen Begg I spoke to the other night. She suggested we might do the same as the UK and give everyone 1 dose. But there's been no official word as far as you are aware.
Yeah, that's right, Sally. But what's interesting is that we are now getting those 3 million doses, as you said, in the second quarter from Covax. And we understand the vast majority of those are the AstraZeneca doses. And the UK has been using those AstraZeneca doses, Sally. So I want to bring it back home and focus on that particular vaccine. We got word last night that these AstraZeneca doses are 76% effective in the first dose, and they provide a window of protection, Sally, for 22 to 90 days after that first dose is administered. And as I mentioned, South Africa expecting to get around about 3 million starting in March. Doesn't necessarily mean that we'll get full of those 3 million on the 1st of March, but starting in March we should start to get those doses. And the key takeaway for South Africa, Sally, is that if there are some sort of delays or logistical snags when it comes to the administration of the vaccines, then at least you've got a bit of a window. You know, you've got some time before you get that second dose administered.
In fact, if I recall correctly, Professor Hill of the AstraZeneca trials at Oxford was telling Jeremy Maggs a few days ago that that 3-month gap is actually the best gap to have in terms of the efficacy. So that's really good news. And of course, the other issue is that I think it's Johnson & Johnson that have a single dose. That is going to cut the logistics in half when it arrives, isn't it?
Let's focus on Johnson & Johnson very quickly, Sally. As you mentioned, this is one of the few vaccines that is actually a single dose. And South Africa expected to get 9 million doses from Johnson & Johnson in the second quarter of this year. So as you say, that will take a lot of the time and the resources out of the equation. And just a quick mention, Sally, that it is 57% effective against the South African variant. South Africans might be saying 57%. That isn't good enough. But it's 57% really against what they call mild COVID. It's much, much stronger when it comes to the severe forms of COVID. In fact, the professor from Oxford University is saying that that number is not poor at all. It should offer plenty of protection to South Africans.
Yeah, I mean, if I know I've got a vaccine that will prevent me from getting a very serious case that could land me in hospital, I might get a few sniffles, I might get some mild symptoms, I would take that. Those odds are good.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, Professor Hill from Oxford University is saying that when it comes to severe COVID, most of the vaccines are close to 100% effective. So we can take some comfort from that.
Absolutely. And also some encouraging news around the variant here, that it also seems to offer protection against a very serious case of that as well. Thank you so much, Michael MARILLIER.